Welcome to Hawaiian IANDS. I'm your host, Sean Lether. I am thrilled to welcome our very special guest, Robert Christophor Coppes. Robert holds a PhD in economics and is a scientist and retired financier who has studied near-death experiences for decades. His conviction that NDEs are true spiritual experiences dates back to 1979 after Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. He lectures on the topic in Europe and the US. He considers his latest book on NDEs, Impression of Near-Death Experiences, his best because of the wealth of quotes from experiencers. In his opinion, they are the best tutors in life. Robert is also the author of NDEs and World Religions, Messages from the Light, Srebrenica and Michael's Cloak, a book about his brother who died of AIDS. Robert lives in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and is joining us in the middle of the night, his time. Welcome, Robert. So glad that you are here.
I'm so glad to be there. It's thrilling that I'm in Hawaii and in so many other places at the same time. It's magic, I would say.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and get started on
good.
Telling us about your book and your research.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here, and it's such a nice thing that we speak here at this meeting with people from Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Singapore, and of course mainland the United States in Hawaii. It's like being in an NDE where you can be in multiple places at the same time. I feel that I'm in all these places at the same time. And also time is very strange because I'm on the Wednesday already. Of course, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and Singapore are in the Wednesday, but in the US, you are still on the Tuesday. So you're lagging behind at this moment. Well, I'd also like to thank Sean Lether for having me. It's really an honor for me to be here in IANDS Hawaii. So I will be talking about my book, and my book is Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and it's a book that has a wealth of quotes from near-death experiencers. There are more than 100 in my book, and I just wrote a little part of the book. I'm the writer, but I wrote the little part of the book. The better part, the bigger part, is all the NDErs that have their quotes there. There are hundreds of these quotes, and I think it's a wealth of quotes in there, and they are from famous NDErs, and I'll mention a few that are endorsers like Ibn Alexander and Anita Moorjani, but also a lot of NDErs that are not famous. And I think it is so important that people write their NDEs down either in books or submit them to websites like IANDS website or the NDERF website. And in Europe, we have Ponto 3. It's very important that people get to know these stories. The more, the better. And my book gives an impression of what NDEs are because of all these NDEs, all these quotes, it gives you an impression. And let me just compare that to looking at a building. Now, I'm in Amsterdam. I'm far away from everyone. I'm in the middle of the night. We have a dam square. That's hence the name of Amsterdam. And on the dam square, there is a palace. It's about 350 years old. And if you're on the dam square looking at the palace, you only see the facade. You don't see the backside. You don't see the sides. You don't see the roof. And you don't see the interior. And the interior is really very beautiful. So you need to have more than one perspective in order to see the real thing. And that's also what I think is the same with near-death experiences. You need to have more than one view in order to get a good impression of what a near-death experience is. So that is the reason why I called my book Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. And if you would ask me what is the essence of the book, actually I'll leave it up to the readers to come to their own conclusion, because if you read it, you go through all these quotes and you get a good view of what NDEs are. But if you'd ask me what is the essence of near-death experiences, then I come up with two words. And these two words are unconditional love and oneness. So unconditional love and oneness. We are all one, and love binds us. I'm you, you are me. Together we are God, or if you like another name, the source or the supreme one. So that is the background of what my book tries to do. It gives an impression. And what will I do here with you tonight, or in your daytime? I'm going to throw a lot of quotes at you, and I'll group them according to the chapters in my book. There are 12 chapters, so there will be 12 sections in which I will give you a lot of quotes. I need a sip of water. So I leave it up to you to take with you the quotes that resonate with you, and I'm sure you are able to do that. In order to start, before I can start, I'd like to give a few sort of disclaimers. Near-death experiences are overwhelming experiences for the one who has this experience. I think the term is wrong as well, because near-death experience gives the impression that you need to be close to death in order to have such an experience. I know that there are different terms like spiritually transformative experiences, but they all come down to the similar kind of experiences. You can have near-death experiences in multiple situations, not only when you're close to death. So other situations would be like in a psychological crisis. There's a lot of cases of people who are in such a situation, and they have they get an NDE. Sometimes even when people pray, or when they are very deeply meditating, and in a few cases I came across people who had spontaneous NDEs. It's very strange that happens, but it happens. So how does I'm starting with my first chapter, and the first chapter is, of course, how it starts. And how it starts is with an out-of-body experience. So to give you a few examples, let me first tell you that exiting your body seems to be very easy. One NDER said, it's like a toast popping out of a toaster. It's very easy. It is instantaneous. And also the thing is that people, when they exit their body, it's such a bewildering experience that they sometimes don't understand what happened. And I'll give you an example. Ellen Dye, a friend of mine, she was in a car at dusk. She had turned her lights on, and an uncomer approached her in the car. It was a man, and this man suddenly, without indicating, turned the car into her lane to go into a side street. Now that led to this accident, and she was her car was severely damaged, and she left her body. But she didn't notice it because she was hovering above the scene. And she looked down upon her car and she could see herself sitting in the car. So looking through the roof, seeing herself in the car. And then she thought, how is that possible? What if my body is there? What is here up here thinking and seeing the whole situation? So that kind of situation occurs so often that people leave their body and they don't understand where they are. Now, this story continues because the gentleman who caused the accident got out of his car, went over to the side of her car where the window was open and turned off the lights to make it appear as if she was driving without the lights. Well, she came through in the hospital and she got a ticket from the policeman, and it went to court, and the gentleman didn't go to court, and then the whole thing was stopped because the other side, the gentleman didn't show up. Another example is, for instance, that's a very nice example, that is a woman who was in hospital. She left her body and then she looked down upon her body in the bed. She had a problem with her lungs. When she looked down, she saw this woman lying there in bed, and she thought, well, that's interesting. This woman has the same nightgown as I have. And then 1 second later, she realizes that it's herself. And I tell you this story because that happens so often, that people are so bewildered by what happens to them that they don't recognize themselves at the start. While this story continues, she then hears her husband in the corridor of the hotel talking in a telephone booth. A telephone booth is, for the people that are young, it's this little cubicle that has a telephone that's attached to the wall. You can't bring it with you. But once she heard her husband talk, she was there with him in the telephone booth, and he was talking to a friend in another state. Now, when this friend in the other state responded to the husband, she was with his friend in that other state, and she went back and forth. So it means that there are actually no limits to what you can do in that other area. In that other world, when you're out of your body, your consciousness can go wherever it wants to go. And then I'd like to give you another example of a woman who went to the synagogue in America somewhere. There was a storm coming on. She parked the car in the street somewhere. And it started raining, so she took out her umbrella, and she was with her 2 children. The 2 children rushed already to the door of the synagogue, and she was walking with the umbrella to the door. And then suddenly there was this lightning flash, and at the same time there was thunder. Well, that means only one thing: it's very close by. So what happened is that she felt some kind of sizzling, but she went on walking anyway. She thought, well, okay, it's over. And she kept walking to the door of the synagogue. And she went in. And once she was in, she saw there was a big confusion there. The children were crying and they were consoled by others. And everyone was looking out of the window, out of the door. And then she turned around and she looked in the direction that she came from. And she saw herself lying on the ground, and the umbrella was blackened in front of her. And then she noticed that she was not in her body anymore. So things like that happen so often. Now this is the second chapter, and what I typically do when I do a talk is, and so in the second chapter is the veridical observations, because people often say, "Oh, these NDEs are just the brain, the dying brain playing tricks on you, or it's a lack of oxygen, or whatever." But there has been very good research on that it cannot be caused by these two things that I just mentioned. But there's other good research done by researchers in the Netherlands. They looked at the veridical observations that there are there. Let me explain the term veridical observations. Veridical observations is a technical term that tries to explain that these are verifiable out-of-body experiences. Now, when you start your NDE, you have your out-of-body experience. Sometimes people, or often people, just go to the other area very quickly, to this heavenly area, or heavenly world. But sometimes people can walk around, like the three stories that I just said before. They can roam around in the hospital or roam around the crash site and then see things that are there. And later, when they can come back again into their body, they can tell these things, and then these things can be independently verified. And these stories, and there are hundreds of those stories, are very important. And these give circumstantial evidence that our consciousness can exist outside our body. It doesn't need our body to exist. Now, let me give you an example to make it clear what I mean. And usually I ask the public, the audience, to tell me which example I would use. So there are three. I can't do that here, so I picked one. I picked Operation Standstill, but in my book there are more examples, like the flapping surgeon or the smoking grannies. But the Operation Standstill is an operation that was performed on Pamela Reynolds. She was a singer, a performing artist in the United States, and she had an aneurysm. And the aneurysm was in a very difficult place. It was in her brain somewhere. So an aneurysm is like a vein that has a bubble on it. And it can burst, this bubble. And then if it's in your brain, you can die. If it's anywhere else in your body, you can still die. But the brain is really, that's really the end of it. And she needed to have this operation, and the operation was a daring one, and it was called the hypothermic cardiac arrest, which is a horrible term. But the nickname of the operation is the Operation Standstill, and that's exactly what it does. It makes your body stop, bring to a standstill. What they did with her is to cool her body down to 60 Fahrenheit, which is 15 Celsius, and then stopped her breathing and stopped her heartbeat. And they did that in order to drain the blood from her body. And why would you do that? Well, if you have a vein with a bubble and you have to mend that, you can compare that perhaps to a bicycle tire, a damaged one with a bubble on it. So what you do, I'm in the Netherlands and we all cycle, so I know these kind of procedures. You deflate the tire, you cut off the bubble, and you patch it up, and you reflate it again. Now that's what they wanted to do with her. So they took away the blood from her body. So to deflate the bubble, they would take it away. They would insert another part of the veins from elsewhere in the body, and then restart everything. Now, it all worked out well, but she had her NDE, and that's where it became interesting, because she could tell everything that happened during the operation. She said, I was in a position just above the shoulder of the surgeon, looking down on the operation and seeing what kind of tools they use. And she described them, and they were tools that you wouldn't think of. She heard the conversation between her and the surgeon about her veins being too narrow to use, so she had to use the veins from the other leg, things like that. And that's impossible if you are under full anesthesia. Also, when your eyes are taped shut, there is a little curtain between your head and your body. And in the ears, she had these devices that gave her clicks of like 100 decibel. And that's really loud. And you won't be able to hear a conversation. And they did that in order to monitor if there was any brain activity that would pop up. So this is an example where an NDEer could tell what happened or was around in the hospital area, and that could be independently confirmed later on. And again, what I said, there are hundreds of these examples, and I find them very compelling and very important as circumstantial evidence for the fact that NDEs are real. But what it shows is actually the first phase. So the phase where you get out of your body, that your consciousness can exist independent from your body and can see things and go to places. Now, coming to the third chapter, and that's called that it's out of this world. So you have to imagine NDErs go to this place where it is so different from what we see here every day. And there are so many nice stories and quotes to go through. But the main thing is, what I get out of it is that they actually say that that other area, this other realm, is so much more real than our earthly realm. You're probably sitting on a chair. You think that's a real chair. It is, of course, but in the other realm, things are more real than what we see here. It is more lively. Apparently, there are more dimensions. And there is such a big freedom. You're not confined by your body, for instance, and there is a lot of freedom in other ways. And you feel more alive than ever. And it's very difficult to explain. People find it difficult to find the right words to explain what it is, and there are not enough concepts in our earthly language to convey what it is all about. Now, and to show that, there is this quote from a woman in the Netherlands, and she's one of the best mediums I know. She said, it's like playing Beethoven, you know, the composer who composed all these wonderful music things. She said, it's like playing Beethoven or having to play Beethoven on a bucket. It's difficult, it's impossible. Or painting a Rembrandt. Rembrandt is one of our famous painters in the Netherlands 350 years ago. He made wonderful pictures, paintings, really wonderful. And she said, it's like painting a Rembrandt and having only a paving stone. I had to look that word up. A paving stone using 2 colors of chalk. Impossible. You can't do it. So what NDErs feel is they can't really explain what it is they have seen over there. Another thing that's interesting is that time is different. People say we can look in the future. One person said 1,000 years in the futures or 1,000 years in history. Someone else said my experience that I had was not in time, it was somewhere between time. And another one said, actually all time is there at the same time. Now that is time. So there's something funny going on with time. It's either not there or it is all there at the same time. But place is a very strange thing over there as well. Like, I'll give you an example of Anita Marjani. You might know her, of course, because of her famous book. She had her NDE after she died in a hospital. I think it was Hong Kong. So everyone was there. So when she left her body, she saw her whole family sitting around her. And there was one missing. That was her brother. When she thought of her brother, she was with the brother in the airplane. And she saw how worried he was because he tried to be at her place at the hospital in time to be there for her passing away. And she saw also all the thinking that he went through. So she could be there instantaneously, no problem. And then there's this other story from an Iranian guy who had an accident in the middle of the desert. He was rushed to the hospital in time, but he had his NDE anyway. So he was in the hospital looking upon how the doctors tried to save him, how the nurses were doing their best to help them. And then at that moment, he thought, what about my mother? How would she be? And then at that moment, he was with his mother in her house, some 100 kilometers or so away from the hospital, and seeing what she was doing. She was preparing a meal, not knowing what had happened to her son. And then at the same time, she saw also the hospital where the doctors were working. And then he thought of some of his friends, and he was in the room with his friends, looking what they were doing. And at the same time, looking upon his mother and seeing what was happening in the operation room. So the idea is, if you want to be somewhere else or at a specific place, apparently that's easy. You can be there instantaneously. Your mind, your consciousness can be there just in a second. So what people also say is that all knowledge is available over there. So you can just think of a question and the answer is there immediately. It's as if all knowledge is there and you can tap into it immediately. And another thing that I would also like to say of this otherworldly, so out of this world kind of realm, is that you have some degree of influence over what you want to see. And I'll tell you the story about Ellen Dye, the one from the car crash that I had just before. She was suddenly catapulted into this dark area. So it was pitch dark. There was nothing there. It was absolutely dark, but she had a wonderful feeling of unconditional love. So the feeling was wonderful, and she stayed there for quite a while, enjoying the loving feeling. And then at one moment, she thought, okay, I'm here for quite a while now, and it's nice, but it's dark. and I'd like to see something else than only darkness. So, and then she said this, and it's a quote, so I have to read that for you. She said, "As soon as I had that thought, everything shimmered and shifted, and I found myself looking out on a park-like setting. It was as if a giant hand with many paintbrushes moved across the canvas, painting the scene with the greenest grass I've ever seen, the largest and most beautiful and most alive flowers and trees, rolling hills with pathways and blue skies with birds overhead. And the colors were brighter and deeper and more alive than any I had ever seen. And I smelled roses and sunshine and freshness. And the trees and birds and flowers and grass were alive and conscious too." Now, I just tell you that because apparently she had some kind of influence over what she was going to see. She wanted to see something like this. This was in her ideas, and that's what she got to see. The fourth chapter, with a number of quotes that I will just throw at you, is love. And as I said before, for me, love and oneness will be later on in this presentation, but love and oneness are both very, very important in my view. And I leave it up to you to come to your own conclusions, but this is my view. It's, unconditional love is something that is being said so often and so many times in NDEs. But I always want people to think, to really think what unconditional actually means. It is without conditions. There's nothing that will keep you away from this love. So you can adhere any religion you want to. It's for people with Christianity, Muslims, Buddhists, you name it, also atheists. So it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're rich or poor, what kind of skin color you have, nothing. Also, if you have been naughty or even bad, I mean, unconditional means that there are no conditions. And I always urge people to think of someone you really don't like or you despise or whatever. It could be a politician or someone from your work environment or someone in the neighborhood. Just think of someone. Also, for that person, there's unconditional love. So that's the idea of unconditional love. And Anita Morjani, that I mentioned just before, she said also that it's unconditional love, but even that term is inadequate to convey the real thing. Just to give you another quote on unconditional love. I learned, and that's not Anita's quote, it's someone else's quote. I learned that what people think of as God is the energy of love, which binds the universe together, all life, all physics. The energy of love is the essence of life. So the essence of life, that's what unconditional love is. Now, the next chapter is 5, and it's about the light. There's a lot of descriptions of the light. It's pure love, pure peace, and pure perfection. And there are so many other quotes. I leave it up to you to read them. There's only one that I'd like to mention, and I like that so much. This person, this gentleman, he said, the light is everywhere. It's not only when we die or when we have our near-death experience that we see the light. It's there also during our daily life here. it's everywhere. And he compared it to the air pressure. And as you know, we are under a column of air, and it exerts a pressure on our heads and our shoulders. We don't feel it, but it's there. There is a pressure on your shoulders. And I had to look that up, what that pressure is in kilos and in pounds. In your country, in the United States, it's 15 pounds per square inch. And I find that a very strange number. We in Europe, we have, and also in other countries on the Pacific, we have a metric system, and that's much easier. So it's 1 kilo per 1 square centimeter. So, but what I want to say is the air pressure is everywhere. We don't feel it. You don't feel it, but it's there at this moment. And that's the same way with the light. That's how he tried to explain it. The light is here everywhere. For one or other reason, we fail to see it or to feel it, but it's there, absolutely sure. Now, the next chapter is 6, and it's life reviews. And life reviews is really, that's a really important aspect of NDEs. And again, not every NDEer has the same story. Every NDE is different. And one NDE is the same as another. So not everyone has a life review. But the people who have a life review, that's very powerful. It's very powerful in changing their lives, because you get to see the life, your life, from a very specific angle. You see your life not only as from your own point of view, but you see your life from the point of view of everyone you interacted with. And you can zoom in on a specific moment, and you can zoom out and you can see the whole thing. And the purpose of a life review seems to be that you become aware of what your life was here on earth, and what you did, or what it was in relation to anyone else. And I'll give you an example from a Dutch woman, but first I need to zip again. I had an interview with an older woman in the Netherlands, and she was very young, just after the war. She was a small child then, and she went to school. And you have to understand that after the war, in the Netherlands, there was nothing. We were a war-torn country, and there was not much luxury there. It was not there. But this NDEer got from her mother some sweets to share with some children in school. And that's what she did. And later in life, she had her NDE. And during her NDE, she saw that particular moment in time where she shared the sweets with her school friends. And she saw how that affected them. She saw how wonderful they thought they were to receive these sweets. And she saw it from their perspective. So she was, for a little bit, she was the friends herself, and she saw what it did to them. And it didn't remain there. It didn't only stay with the school friends, but she saw that it also went further to the mothers of these school friends. And then she had another story, same period as a child. There was this school friend who had lice, you know, these little crawling animals in your hair. very itchy. Nowadays, we have shampoos, so we can easily get rid of them, but not at that point in time. Just after the war in the Netherlands, there was nothing. So one of these friends asked her, please, can you help me to squeeze a few? And then she said, okay, I will do that. And she made a big fuss out of it. And then when she had her near-death experience, she saw that particular point in time where she did that to this school friend. And she felt the pain she had, the school friend. So she didn't see it only from her perspective, but she saw it from the perspective of the school friend. And it felt like her heart was stabbed by a knife. And that in itself was painful. But she said the most painful thing of this experience was not that, it was something else. It was that I could see that there were options, there were different ways that I could have done it. I could have said something else, and that would have brought much more love into the world. And that she lost out on that opportunity. That was, as she said, that was really painful. She could have chosen something else, and that would have been very, very nice. Now, next example of a life review is the one from Daniel Brinkley. I really like this story. It was written down by Paul Perry and Daniel Brinkley. It's a really very nice book to read. He got his NDE as a consequence of a lightning strike while he was on the phone, on a landline phone. And as he said himself, he was a terrible, terrible guy. He was, when he was small, when he was in school, he bullied other children. He stole their bikes. He was in countless fights. And then later on in life, he went to work for for some American organization that went abroad to liquidate people that were in the way, so to speak, that were against the US government or so. And he said one time, so he killed a lot of people. And one time he blew up a whole hotel with something like 50 people in it to just get out, to get at one person, to kill off one person. Now, when he was in his life review, he saw whatever he did, but he saw it from also the perspective of the other person. And what he said, I was the receiver then. You understand? It's so you're not only the actor, but you're also the receiver, and you're on the receiving end. So he felt whatever he did to each of those people, and especially to the people that he killed off. And he said, I didn't see it only from their perspective, but I saw it also from the perspective of the wives of these people, because they were mainly men and they were married. And so the feeling of the wives, as if he were the wives, and also the children of the wives. So, and you have to imagine that in itself is very, very painful. That's what he said. It was a very, very painful experience that I had to go through all this, but also from the receiving side. And if you think it stays with people, that's not the case. There are wonderful stories in my book about how animals, how you can also access the feelings of animals. And Daniel Brinkley also gives this example where he was driving in his car together with his uncle through the countryside somewhere. And he saw a farmer hitting a goat that was caught in the fence. So the goat couldn't escape, but so the farmer was whipping this goat. Now, Damien was a kind of an explosive guy. So he stopped his car, he rushed out of his car, went over to this farmer, and before the farmer knew what was happening, he gave him a few blows, and the goat had time to just release itself and then run away. And in his near-death experience, he felt how it was, how relieved the goat was because of this moment that he could escape. So that shows you that it's also animals. And now I'm on it, it's also plants. There's this story about this Iranian guy who, as a child, had to fetch some water in the river and bring it back home. But the bucket was full and it was too heavy for him. So what he thought, he saw somewhere in the distance, he saw a little tree, very thirsty tree. He said it was a thirsty tree. So he went over and poured a little bit of the water out of the bucket onto the tree trunk. And then he went back home, didn't think of it. But in his near-death experience, it was as if the whole universe was happy for this wonderful little gesture towards this very thirsty tree. And then another example, what I'd like to tell you is from a Boy Scout who drowned. He tried to rescue someone else, but this person had a fit, so he hit the Boy Scout and he drowned. He got his near-death experience, and then in his near-death experience, he had his life review. And he said, I had this life review in the presence of an angel. Then he says to the angel, I hope I'm not being judged too severely because of all I've done. And then the angel says, well, you're judged by the most powerful judge there is. And then he asked the angel, when will that happen? And then the angel replies, well, that has already happened. The judge is you. And that shows you another thing. In NDEs, there's no one judging you. It is more a matter of understanding what you did, understanding the other side that you did things for or against, to see your place on earth, in the world, your interaction with others. It's not about punishment, or there's no one coming towards you with the Bible or the Quran or anything to show you where you went wrong. There is no judgment. And if there is a judge, then it is you yourself. So that is life reviews. And that's an important thing. And it's, again, I want to stress that it's a kind of it's a life changer. And I'm conscious of the time now, so I still have 5 minutes. I thought I have so much to say. Let me say that everyone is important. There is a purpose and a plan for each of us. If you wouldn't have a plan, you wouldn't be here. Distressing NDEs, they are there. They occur. We can't just say that they are not there. They exist. It's a minority, but we don't have enough information to really see through what they are. In my book, there's a whole chapter on this, and I wrote it together with Nancy Evans Bush. actually, I wrote it and she read it and she gave me some hints to change it. And the main thing here I'd like to say is that it is wrong to say that distressing NDEs occur only to bad people. And I do this because the words good and bad are earthly words. There's some cultural connotation there. So it's difficult to say who is good or bad. But you cannot say that bad people only have distressing NDEs and good people have blissful ones. So there must be another explanation for that. And she came up with an explanation that, well, in the first phase of your NDE, the collective conscious can still pop up with images, or they can come out of your own conscious. So there is some kind of interaction there. But again, you cannot say that good people have blissful NDEs and bad people have distressing NDEs. As an example, the Daniel Brinkley case, you could say he is a bad person. He had a wonderful NDE, apart from his life review, of course. And there's a wonderful book by M.K. McDaniel, Misfit in Hell to Have an Expat. That's an example of a brave woman who wrote down her story of being in a distressful environment, and she is a normal person, a common person, someone like we all are. Certainly not someone who blew up a hotel with 50 people in it. And to end this part on distressing NDEs on a positive note, there are also NDErs who get to hear explicitly that there is no hell or purgatory. That's Chris Carlson who said that. And another NDEr said, we all go home. There's home where we all will be. So, and there is another reason why it is not logical for there to be a kind of hellish environment, because the other important thing of near-death experience is the oneness that's being felt. If we are all one, then why would some part of that oneness be left in distress? That's illogical. Then I come to my second important point, that's the oneness, but I'm looking at Sean. Can I go on for a little bit more to finish this point, and then we can...
Yes, please. Yeah.
Because, you know, this point is so important. How to say that? So we seem to be we are part of one big whole. Let me give you an example of a woman who was in her NDE. She knew she had to go back to her body because that was told to her, and she wanted to go back to her body. Not everyone wants to go back to the body, but she wanted, because she had a daughter to look after. And then she thought, it's so simple over here. How come we don't see this when we are in our body? And then she thought of one sentence that would say it all, that would give all the information about that other area. And that one sentence was, all is everything and everything is one. All is everything and everything is one. And there are people that say, that go further than that we are one. Some people really say that we are part of God. I'll give you this quote of a lady in the Netherlands, and she said, I feel completely perfect, completely one with the light and the love, and I know that it is God. I am in God, and God is in me. We are one perfect unity. there are more people that say things like that. It's such a it's wonderful to think that you are one, because I always say it's kind of a zero-sum game. Whatever you do to someone else, you do actually to yourself. And then I skip a few chapters. I'll come to this chapter on why we are on Earth. Now, that's a very interesting chapter, of course. Some people say it's kind of a game. It's like God wants to go to the cinema. He or she or it created this environment with all the limitations, like only 3 dimensions and time. Or we are already perfect because we have the divinity within us, and we just need to express that in this environment that has so many limitations. Or it is to practice love or to raise the energy. And I want to tell this story about Christina in this, and then I'll stop. This is a wonderful story because she was assaulted by 2 men. They tried to drown her. She was underwater with her face upwards, and she saw through the water. She could see the sun, and she saw her, but she had another point of view as well. So she was hovering above the scene, looking down upon what was happening, and she saw her father coming to rescue her. Now, and then she had her NDE, and in her NDE, she had a conversation with this man, elderly man. And she said it couldn't be anyone else than God. So I had a conversation with God, she said, and God gave me a recipe for life. And the recipe for life is very easy because it has only 4 ingredients. And I'll mention them to you. So the 4 ingredients are love, be loved, just be, experience life. Love, be loved, just be, experience life. Now, the latter 2 are easy because we do that already. You can do nothing and you still are, and you experience life. But the first 2, love and be loved, it requires action. So that is where it becomes exciting. But the fact that you have to experience life, that is in itself also important to know. Okay, I'll leave it there. But my idea is that if people would really understand from veridical observations that near-death experiences are real, they will look at what the messages are. And the messages are unconditional love and oneness. If I do something to you, I do it to myself. It is a zero-sum game. And then I hope people will change their way of living, being nicer to each other, to nature, and to everything. Okay, Sean, this is 1 hour, a little bit more.
So beautiful. So what I would like to start off with, and please put your questions in the chat, send me your questions for Robert, and we will ask him what you'd like to know. But what I wanted to start off with is death can bring awakenings. You don't have to have an NDE. Somebody dying can bring an awakening. And so I wanted to talk to you about Michael, your brother, and how did his death, we have AIDS Day, World AIDS Day coming up next month, December. How did his death from AIDS, how did that bring about your spiritual awakening, and how did it affect you?
Well, my brother passed away in '92 after AIDS. AIDS was the thing that killed him. He was surrounded by family and friends that looked after him for the last bit of his life. Everyone took turns in cooking some dinner for him every evening. When he passed away, when just after the funeral, I went back with my father 200 kilometers back to our home. And in the car, I got this, I don't know how to say that, kind of a voice or feeling. It's difficult to say, but it was very clear that I should write this book. And the whole plot and how it was to be in which tense, and that I should have interviews with each and every person, and then write it. And then when I came home, I discarded it. And next evening, I went to a concert, and I had the same voice, or the same, it's difficult to explain what it is. And then I wrote the book, and that's where I started writing, actually. And it was, for me, it was a very spiritual thing, that something like a voice came to me to tell me what to do. Yeah, that's where I came from. That's how I started writing. And then I was raised Catholic, with hell and purgatory, and I always thought that's a silly story. Somehow I thought that didn't resonate with me. And then when I read Raymond Moody's book, with a woman who had a life review, and in the life review no one judged her, I thought that's how it is. And that's where it started for me. So I didn't have an NDE, but I'm very happy that I can, as a researcher, I can look at all the NDEs, read them, speak to all these people, and do my work there to give, in this case, to give everyone multiple perspectives of what an NDE is, so that people can come to their own conclusion. And also to see, even if you have had an NDE, that you can see what others have experienced, and how that worked in their lives.
And also, as a kid growing up, one of your goals was to be a writer.
Yeah, that was another kind of feeling. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to become a millionaire, and I wanted to become a missionary. Now, I became a writer, and I think I am some sort of a missionary when I talk about NDEs. And if you include the house that I live in, I'm a millionaire, and I'm a millionaire because I'm so happy.
And how about when you're when you completed the book, your brother paid you a visit, right? When you was it in Japan?
Yeah, that's it's very difficult to explain, but I was on once I spoke with my brother after looking at the film Ghost, with Whoopi Goldberg.
Goldberg. Yep.
Demi Moore. Demi Moore is the important person here. Then I was finished with my book, with the last interview that I had in Japan, because my brother had gone there, and I was on a square, and the woman was yelling at me, shouting something at me, and in a friendly way. But she said, and the Japanese guy that was interpreting for me, he said, "This woman is calling out to you as if you are Demi Moore." And I said, "Well, that's strange, because I have blonde hair and she has dark hair, and I'm a man and she is a woman." And then the voice in my head came back again and told me, "Think of this movie that you saw. How did it end?" And then I thought, well, yes, the bad guy was caught under a shattered window and was killed. And then the voice said, no, further, at the real end. And then I thought, how was the real end again? And then I thought, oh yeah, Patrick Swayze saw Demi Moore after everything was cleared, and could then leave the earth indefinitely. And then I thought, I'm in the same situation with my brother. My brother had told me to write this book. The book is finished now. I'm finished. he can let go now. He can go back to heaven. I always get a little bit emotional when I think of that moment, because I have looked around to see if he was there. Like in the movie, Demi Moore could see Patrick Swayze. So I was frantically looking around, where is my brother? And I couldn't see him, but he was in my head. And it was a very tense moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had the knowing that he gave you the knowing that he could now move on, right?
Yes,
When you
that's
completed
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I love that, because, there's so many ways for us to wake up. As many people know, not everybody has NDEs. And so often just the death of a loved one can be the catalyst. So I want to ask.
I don't think it is necessary to have an NDE to have the knowledge and the feeling of what it is. If you really think that vertical observations give some circumstantial evidence, then consume all those NDEs. That's why I say it's so important for people to write down their experience or to tell it to others.
Yes. I want to touch on a few things that you already talked about, but maybe to underline. The life reviews. The only judging that I believe that you said mostly that is going on is self-judgment, correct? Yeah. And with the distressing NDEs, do they all, the ones that you studied, do most all of them eventually go to the light, even though the beginning part may be more distressing?
There are a lot of distressing NDEs that end well. Yeah, they find their way to the light, but there are also distressing NDEs that stop and then they are back in their body. The NDEr is back in the body and then has this horrible experience. And again, those experiences they vary they in depth and in how horrible they are. But again, I'd like to stress that it can happen to anyone, because I agree with Nancy Evans Bush that it's that these things come out of the collective consciousness, conscious or your own conscious. But again, I believe that eventually, I don't believe in hell or purgatory. I believe we all go there. We go home. That's our goal.
And most of the people you've researched do not believe in hell or purgatory as well, correct?
That's correct. Most people that I saw or that I spoke or read, they believe in the unconditional love, and there are a number of NDEs who have had a distressing NDE also come to that conclusion. There's a wonderful book by Barbara Romer. It's called Blessing in Disguise. She tells a lot of stories about people who had a distressing NDE, but it changed their lives in a way that was necessary for them to change it. So it was a blessing in disguise, something not nice, but it was a blessing anyway. Yeah.
And somebody can have a white light mystical NDE and then have a distressing NDE, right? There's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason sometimes to them.
No, there's too few people that come out with their distressing NDE to really get a good to research it very well. And I think it's very brave of those people who do it. Like Howard Storm and M.K. McDaniel. And in my book, I have a few other examples.
Yeah. Yes, that is sure. We have some very brave people that come to our sharing groups that are willing to share their distressing NDEs.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit, but what is the conclusion of most NDErs that researched? What is the purpose of our life here on Earth? And why is there so much suffering?
Why, that's the question. Why are we on Earth? And why is there so much suffering? Well, there is suffering because apparently we have free will. And we are in a limited environment. We are in a meat puppet. We are in our diver suit. That's our body. And our body needs to eat, to drink, and there are so many other things that we want. And if you are in an unlimited environment where there's only unconditional love, then that's very easy. And there are no problems there. But if you are in this world that we are in now, our world is really created with the limitations to make it maybe difficult for us to express our divinity, but our divinity is there. Each one of us has the light within us. Also, the biggest crook that you think of. That's why I always say, think of someone that you really despise. Everyone has maybe someone like that. Also, for that person, there's unconditional love, but there's also light within those people. And it's difficult to get out, to express that light from them. But it's there. And the limitations of our world are such that it's sometimes really difficult to express our divinity, but it is there. That's how I see it and how I believe it, and also how a number of NDErs would put it.
So what would you say? Many people don't know this, but I too am Dutch. Both my parents are from Holland, and it's been a long time since I was there. But many people there, at least for my family, will never forgive Hitler. So based on what you know and what you were just saying, how could you translate all of this to somebody like Hitler?
I hear this question so often. And the only thing I can say is that what I understand from NDErs is that we all have light within us. We all have the divinity within us. We are all unconditionally loved, and there are no exceptions. So also the person that you just mentioned, if you want to, you cannot exclude him from a non-exclusive group. It's not for us to judge him. But on the other side, if it is a zero-sum game, life is a zero-sum game. What you do to someone else is not lost. It is something that affects you as well. On the other side, you affect universe. That's what NDErs have told me. If I do something to someone else, I affect the whole of the universe because it's one. That's why it's a zero-sum game. If I do something to you, I do it also to myself, because I do it to universe and or whatever it is. Words get in the way, but it's one big whole. I do it to this one big whole, and I do it to myself because I belong to that one big whole. So in this case, Hitler, also him. And you can mention, you can make a whole list of these people. That's what I understand from NDErs.
Yeah. And so most NDErs would say then that he experienced in his life review the effects of his actions. So he got to experience what other people experienced based on his actions.
Yes, but with the notion that it's not as a punishment.
Right.
Become aware of your place in on earth, in history, in the whole scheme. And you know, I don't know these things, of course, but this is the only thing that I repeat from what I hear from NDErs. The real thing is so much bigger than we are. It's so much bigger than any one religion also. So it is not up to us to judge. I gladly leave it up to someone else.
Yes. What has your NDE research revealed about pre-life planning? Do most experiencers believe in a pre-life plan?
That's interesting. You typically see some NDErs who have seen what they were looking for in life. There is a wonderful story about Betty Guaidano. I heard it the other day, and before she came to Earth, she pictured it as she was in a supermarket where she could pull out of all the shelves the experiences she wanted to go through. And she was thrilled to go to Earth, to be in that body and to experience all kinds of stuff. So she pulled out incest and rape and drug abuse and all these horrible things, and she was happy to do all that. Now, this is her story, but there are also other people that decided to be in a specific place with specific parents experiencing certain experiences. So that shows you that we have always been there. Apparently, we may have some kind of choice over where to go. But if you talk about reincarnation, then the number of people that, the number of NDErs that believe in reincarnation is the same number as you would see in a general population. So that doesn't say anything. But reincarnation is a concept that is also a bit of earthly, with time moving in one direction, where you had previous lives. You don't have future lives because the future is still to come. That's the general idea of reincarnation. And if you really look at the messages from NDEs, NDErs, they say that time is all at the same time. So why only past lives? Why not future lives? And Anita Morjani, I think she suggested also that we actually have parallel lives all at the same time, because everything happens at the same time. And I, you know, I see it as, I take oneness to extremes, which means that when a child is born, there needs to go something in it. A spirit needs to go in it. And where does the spirit come from? Well, that comes from the source, from the one, from the whole. And when the person dies again, it goes back to this whole. And this whole knows everything. It knows all the lives of everyone. So I don't say that this is how it is. I just want to put this next to our belief in reincarnation, where the oneness, the source reincarnates, not we. We go back again to this ocean where we belong. There are wonderful quotes that I didn't come up to that say that I'm dissolved. This person said, I'm so happy to just leave my body because I don't have this pain, I don't have these emotions, I have this total freedom. But then she goes one step further. She says, there is, even my consciousness is dissolved in what we call the Godhead. So the consciousness disappears. And why not? Because we are all one. We are all the same matter. We are divine. But it's in us. We just need to express it in this limited environment that we created because we wanted to see how it worked. That's how I would see it. But that's my view.
So would you say that based on your research, do souls that choose harder lives, are they older or stronger souls? Why do some souls choose hard lives and the souls choose much easier lives, you think?
You know, I have no idea. What I know is that there people live now, so they create children, so there must be something in it. There is drug abuse now, so if a child is born, a number of children need to go on that path. There's a number of people that will become criminals there. So there are difficult lives on earth. It's not that I like that, but it is a fact of life. And people that have these difficult lives, there should be, the spirit should be in those people as well. So that's how it works. But yeah, it's a difficult discussion because I don't know how it works in itself. These are my views based on the notion that we are all one. I take oneness to extremes. Where I do something to you, I do it to myself or to the universe. That's sort of how I think. But I don't know how that works with why some people would choose difficult lives. There are difficult lives. Some part of the spirit needs to do that part of that life, needs to do that life. So it's no choice for the source. The source needs to fill up all these people that have easy lives, but also people that have difficult lives, people that are beggars in the street, people that are doing drugs, people that are doing terrible things, because those people are they have a history. It comes from somewhere. No one out of nothing starts using drugs. There's a reason for it. Also, let's just name this person. Putin comes from somewhere. He has a history. It's not just like he pops up. No, there's a history why he is there in that place. And there is spirit that needs to be in this guy, because everyone has a spirit and it's all one. I take oneness to extremes.
That's beautiful.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that would disagree with me, but oneness is something that is one of the things that NDEs say so often. So I take that in extreme forms.
Yeah, I agree. So what is next for you? Are you researching more NDE stories? What's next for you?
I think I will still do some research. As every time I see new NDE, it's interesting. All these stories are so nice, and I urge people, listeners who have had an NDE and didn't submit it to IANDS or NDERF or anywhere else, put it out there. It's important that people read your story. Even if you just tell it to your family or your friends, it's important that they understand that this is there. It may also bring hope and consolation, because one of the things that NDErs say is that death is not the end, and that's the nice thing as well. It continues.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Robert. It's been a wonderful evening, and we're so honored that you've stayed up all night. What time is it there now? 4 or 5?
It's 4:30 in the night.
4:30.
It's such a joy to be here with you and with so many other people. So I'm really happy to do this, and thank you for everyone listening in.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight with everyone. And thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you, David and Susan and Jack, for helping moderate everything. And we look forward to seeing you all at the sharing group on the 21st, and then all of our amazing events in December. So I just want to thank everyone again. Thank you, Robert. Aloha, everyone. Have a wonderful evening or morning, Robert. Aloha.
You still have to go to your Wednesday.
Yes, yes, yes. You are living our future right now. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you later. Aloha.